Hey gamers, welcome to D&D House Rules number 12. So here in our YouTube channel for Game Shop's Basement, we try to support the games we have at Game Shop's Basement with world lore, rules clarifications, house rules explanations, stuff like that. Well, today I'm stepping out a little bit more. I've kind of hinted at this before, and kind of taken a bold stand. I'm going to make kind of a bold. Well, actually, I'm not going to make the statement myself. Credit where credit is due. Somebody else made the statement, but I'm going to agree with it, and I'm taking up the cause because it resonates with me so strongly, and I feel so passionately about it. So you guys have probably heard me refer a lot to Glenn Welch. Here on YouTube, his channel's Mr. Welch. Love his channel. I was a fan of his channel for 2 years before I became a professional dungeon master at GameShopsBasement.com. And, it's the first time I even saw one of his videos. I knew that I'd found a kindred spirit in someone who was a lover of Mystara. But recently, he did a video a few weeks ago, and it wasn't about Mystara, it was about D&D in general, and specifically he was talking about things that he expected from this coming D&D 5.5 that's coming out in 2024, and things that he realistically was expecting of it, and things that he would like to see in it, things that the game actually needs. And I share his skepticism that Wizards of the Coast will actually do some of those things. but and he said something that just, if that had been said in a church sermon, I would have whooped up and down and said, "Amen, brother, come on." I would have, and I'm not usually, that's not really my style of worship in church, but I would have just gone, "Woo, yeah, amen, preach on, brother Glenn." It just resonated with me so much when he said that the D&D game developers at Wizards of the Coast these days, in our current times, simply don't understand. They don't get many of the core concepts of the game. Now, that's not saying that they're totally ignorant and they get nothing. They don't understand anything. Obviously, they understand something. But there's important key elements of the game that they're just not getting. And some of the things that, I was just talking to another game master yesterday in Game Shop's Basement. He was a new player and showed up to our Monday morning Dragonlance game. And I had to cut myself off because I was starting to sidebar. And if you guys are at my house in my personal game, we all play the game for different reasons. We all get different things out of the game. One of the things that happens at my house in my personal game is that a lot of us here in the St. Louis area where I am are busy. And sometimes at our personal game at my house, that's the only time we really see each other, in person anyway. And so sometimes instead of just rolling dice and pouring soda and having monsters and having fantasies about D&D worlds and our characters, sometimes we actually talk. I know it's, hey, how was your week? How's work? How's the job? Stuff like that. So one of the elements that we have at my table is just regular friendship, fellowship, socialization. But when you're paying me to be your dungeon master at GameShopsBasement.com, and I DM these 3-hour blocks, I really try to cork it. I do it a little bit because it's friendly, it's social, it's building rapport, and we are human beings, hanging out together. So I do it a little bit, but I try not to go on and on and on and on. I try to put a cork in it once in a while, because you're paying me to DM, not, but yeah. So I was talking to this game master just yesterday. Had to put a cork in it because we started going off on this topic. And today we're specifically going to mention one. I'll broaden on this in the future in future videos. But for now, I'm just going to stick with one example to kind of make my point. Sometimes the best way to make a point is to bring up an example. So the examples today are rust monsters and gray oozes. Now, rust monsters and gray oozes go all the way back to the red basic box set. So they're not anything new that was made up in the the 90s or the 2000s or the 20-teens or the past couple of years in the 2020s. They're not rust monsters and gray oozes are not new concepts to the game. They are classic all the way back to the red basic box set. And it I recently observed when I was DMing some Rust monsters in 5th edition and looking at them in the monster manual that for some reason, after 40 years, the Rust monster effect doesn't affect magic metal. It only affects muggle metal, mundane metal, like non-enchanted regular metal like you could find in real life. So, but it doesn't affect your magic sword or your magic dagger or your magic mace because, heaven forbid that your character should ever have a setback. I mean, and then that's, yeah, heaven forbid your character should ever have a setback or that you should ever feel bad that your character lost a magic item. I mean, good gravy here. It's just a game. It's not like somebody took your real life car or took your real life house or even beat you up in elementary school and took your real life lunch. Your sword plus one, your flame tongue sword or Vorpal sword or Frostbrand sword. These are imaginary things that your imaginary character has. And if we're telling an epic story, in epic stories, characters do have setbacks. And one of the fun things that happens in D&D, I like it when I'm a player, is getting the goodies, getting the loot, getting the magic items. This past weekend, I played a card game called Munchkin with one of my sons. And Munchkin, basically, their whole concept in their card game is basically boiled down to the gratification part of D&D. Knock down the door, fight the monster, take the treasure. No story, no political intrigue, no quest or anything. Just and level up. Don't forget level up. Knock down the door, fight the monster, take the treasure, level up. But so the thing is, there's always more magic items. There's a constant stream of magic items into your character's life, unless you have a weirdo dungeon master that doesn't have any magic items in their world, and they do exist. I've never met any, but I have read some articles by some, and I've heard of some, and I've heard stories of some, but I've never met one in person. As long as your dungeon master has magic items in D&D at all, there's a constant stream of magic items flowing into your group, and a lot of characters when they get to high level, imagine the 20th level fighter. In his castle, because if you're 20th level and you don't have a castle, you either don't want a castle, which is fine, that's a choice, or you played it wrong. Somehow you got to 20th level, you did it wrong. By 20th level, you should have a castle. And unless maybe you just rolled up a character at 20th level for a one-shot or something. But that's a topic for another day, is having your character grow up in the world and affect the world as they level up and find their place in the world. But let's say you've got a 20th level character. 20th level character, it doesn't have to be a fighter. I just picked a fighter at random. But your 20th level character is at their home in their castle, and they want to go on an adventure, and they're like, well, which sword should I bring with me? And they go to their cabinet of magic swords, and by the time they're 20th level, and they've got like 10 magic swords in their cabinet. So the idea that a rust monster or a gray ooze could destroy a magic item. The idea of slowing down party progression by slowing down a little bit, giving them some setbacks in their accumulation of magic items, that is not going to hurt them. Not one bit. So for D&D House Rules number 12 video here, I think it's fair as long as you tell the party in advance. Because I felt like I'd found another kindred spirit, yesterday, when this guy said, "Oh yeah, you have rust monsters do, and gray oozes do what they're supposed to do too. So do I." And I've noticed that I'm not alone. There's a lot of game masters in D&D who feel like I do, that some of the old concepts that Wizards of the Coast has cast aside should not have been cast aside. So a couple videos ago, I kind of teased this idea with the Ring of Regeneration, how the canonically 5th edition Ring of Regeneration doesn't do anymore, doesn't bring the dead back anymore. But now the rust monsters and the gray oozes, they don't, they leave your magic metal alone. They don't dissolve magic metal. They only dissolve, mundane muggle non-enchanted metal. Your long sword, your regular long sword with no bonuses that you bought at Player's Handbook price when you were just a character being created, but now that you've got a flame tongue, or now that you've got a sword plus 2, oh heaven forbid that something should happen to that. But so if I think if the game master tells you in advance that my rust monsters are old school rust monsters, as long as the players know in advance, then I think it's fair. Don't surprise them. Nobody likes surprises. Okay. I've mentioned before that I kind of follow the Jesus Golden Rule at my D&D table. I try to run the table that I would appreciate. I don't appreciate those kind of surprises. So as long as you tell the players in advance that like your rust monsters and your gray oozes are old school, and they will, like, if you dip that sword +3 into a gray ooze, it's going to suddenly become a sword +2. Or if that rust monster, touches your sword +1, it's gonna lose its enchantment and suddenly become a normal sword, like you could have bought out of the player's handbook, non-enchanted. If you let people know in advance, then they can take precautions, like the fighter in the cartoon that is the visual for this video. So he's taking precautions. He's jumping into the arms of the wizard. But yeah, so when players know in advance, or they used to know in advance, because that's just how those things were in the books in previous editions, they would come up with creative alternatives. It forces your players to come up with creative alternatives because, okay, like for example, if a fighter does have this beautiful magic sword, but any fighter worth their salt carries alternate weapons. That's just something you do if you're smart. Carry alternate weapons. Well, I don't want to dip my magic sword in the gray ooze, or I don't want to fight the rust monster with my magic sword. But I have my backup weapon, and my backup weapon isn't magical at all. I don't really care about that one, so I'll just beat the crap out of this rust monster, with my non-magical backup weapon. So the players actually have to think and plan and strategize, and heaven forbid the players might have to think and plan and strategize. So this has been kind of like my old man rant, because I've been playing D&D for 39 years, from ages 11 to 50. So yeah, D&D House Rule 12 is that my rust monsters and gray oozes are old school. All right, well, I'll see you next time on the next video, and in the meantime, I'll see you in game. So right now, I'm sitting outside on a patio making D&D videos as part of what I do to get paid. I'm a professional game master, and if you're a game master and you've thought of making some money at it, you can too. We have at the Game Shop's basement a 7 days to Pro GM course that teaches in 7 lessons what took me 50 days to do, to build up my business to the point where I don't need my job anymore. So that's kind of exciting. Or maybe you just want to make a little extra money, have a little bit of a diverse income stream. That's kind of a smart thing to do these days with the world being all crazy. Or you might want something that you can work from home without having to go anywhere. Well, check into Pro DMing. So at GameShopsBasement.com, at the top of the webpage, we've got a banner that will take you to a page where you can learn more information about the 7 days to Pro GM course. And it's fun. It's exciting. Check it out.